Oh, why support? Support. It is probably one of the issues in a divorce that causes the most conflict. Why? Because quite frankly, when you get divorced, your financial situation changes drastically. And the person that's receiving support or wants to receive support never thinks it's enough. And the person that's paying support always thinks it's too much. Welcome to Gavels Down, Voices Up, where we flip the script on conventional legal discussions. I'm Rachel King, here to guide you through the murky waters of family law, estate conflicts, inheritance disputes, all of the dramas. We're not just talking about law, we're talking about how it affects your life, your rights, your future, and your money. From the courtroom to your living room, we bring you insights that matter. Dive into each episode ready to challenge, learn, and grow. Ready to change the dialogue? Let's begin. Gavels down, voices up. My name is Rachel King. I'm an attorney. I own King Law Firm Attorneys at Law Incorporated and Budget Legal Services. I'm also the author of Getting Divorced Now What, which is available at gettingdivorcednowwhat.com. So you can pop over there and get your free chapter. If you are interested in getting an autographed copy, I'd love to send one to you. Go ahead and DM me or text my phone number, which is on the screen. A little bit about me. I, again, own my own law firm. I've been a law firm owner for over 10 years. I've been involved in the family law legal field for over 10 years as not only somebody that helped mediate divorce cases, but also as a litigator in court almost every single day. I don't even want to know how many hours of courtroom time I have, but I'm also that nerd that thinks it's super fun to listen to court and to go in sometimes on like my down days and just listen to how judges think and what they do in other people's scenarios. This, I think, gives me a leg up when I'm working with cases because seeing how judges think in different fact patterns being your life and your scenario. Today, we are going to talk about support, both child support and spousal support. But you can also find a wealth of information in my book, Getting Divorced Now What, which is available online in print at gettingdivorcednowwhat.com. And it provides a lot of general information, the tips and tricks that I learned by, again, spending hours and hours in the courtroom, and then real life stories about some of the more common or nuanced situations in the entire divorce process. Today, we're going to talk about support, child and spousal support. I did a seminar just prior to this on asset, debt, and division. So if you missed that, I believe it's available on Facebook Live for the next 30 days, and then it will be on my podcast, Gavels Down, Voices Up. Also, before that even, I did a seminar on child custody and visitation and what to expect there. Also probably available on Facebook Live for the next 30 days, but if you don't know if it's still there, you can pop over to Gavels Down, Voices Up, subscribe there on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts, and when it comes out, you'll be able to hear all of that fun stuff too. Okay. So let's get into support. Oh, why support? Support. It is probably one of the issues in a divorce that causes the most conflict. Why? Because quite frankly, when you get divorced, your financial situation changes drastically. And the person that's receiving support or wants to receive support never thinks it's enough. And the person that's paying support always thinks it's too much. So it just is horrendous. The person that's paying doesn't think they should be paying, is saying things like, go get a job, it's not my fault, or I have the kids 50-50 too and half the time, so I shouldn't have to pay you child support. The other person is like, well, I make less than you, or I was the stay-at-home mom, or whatever the case is. And so people just fight. And then you add in some of the laws that people don't like in a long-term marriage in California, which is typically over 10 years, spousal support goes on like death or remarriage. Like it can go, or further court order, like it can go on for a very long time. Also in California, one of the things people don't like is, hey, we've only been married for 18 months, but when we got married under the condition that I was always going to be the stay-at-home parent and take care of the kids, and we have a child, and I want to be able to do that. Well, you don't get to. You've only been married for 18 months. You're not getting spousal support for more than 9 months, probably. But you might get child support. So let's talk all about support. First, I like to say that you can always reach any agreement that you want on support. So whether it is child support or spousal support, and the law says that you're going to get spousal support until the day that you die or you remarry or he dies. Okay, but you're like, yeah, but I don't want that or I don't need that. Okay, so like don't agree to it. Like agree to whatever you want. Make your own agreements. And to the extent that you can reach agreements on support, probably makes the whole thing a little bit easier because again, support is what causes so many cases to implode. So child support will start there first. If there's children that are minors, then in all likelihood, child support is going to be an issue that needs to be addressed. Even if you guys have an agreement in your divorce decree or your divorce final judgment, it's probably going to have to be addressed. Even if you just say like no child support, right? Also, interestingly, you can almost always modify child support after the fact. If somebody gets a better paying job or gets laid off, like you can typically modify child support or go in and have the court change it. So child support is ordered. This is generally speaking. Nothing I'm saying is legal advice. I am talking general information only, and it is not a substitute for you going and talking to an attorney in your jurisdiction. Attorneys are the only one, we'll shout out attorneys right now, are the only people that can take the law and what's going on in your life and pair them together to tell you what is likely to happen. That's a really important thing to do as you're making decisions on how you want to proceed with your divorce process. Doesn't mean you need to go in and hire a full-blown attorney. Maybe just a consultation is enough, but you want to have the information available to you so that you can make the best decisions for you in your divorce. All right, now that we've done that, let's talk about child support. So child support typically is going to be ordered anytime there are children that are under the age of 18 that are of the marriage. So what does of the marriage mean? It means that they were conceived and born during the marriage, or they were born, I can't remember if it's 9 or 10 months. There's a period of time after the marriage. If that's the case, it's presumed that it is a child of the marriage. So if we have a minor under 18 years old, or at least in California, if they are still enrolled full-time in high school but not yet 19 years old, and I'll play out that scenario for you in a minute, then there can still be a child support order. So we need a child that's of the marriage, so your child and your spouse's child. And then we need a visitation schedule. So how much time is your child with you? How much time is your child with dad? And then we need to know what the incomes are. How much money do you make? How much money does dad make? So we talked a little bit about what a child of the marriage is, and then again, their age. We'll use one of my kids as an example. So I have kids that were born in March, and both of my kids that were born in March will be seniors in high school when they turn 18 years old. They'll turn 18 in March, but they won't graduate high school till June. In that scenario, for child support, my child support order would go all the way until they graduated, even though it's past 18, right? Because they're still enrolled full-time in high school. But let's say one of my kids decided to drop out of high school at like, I don't know, in April after they turned 18. I wouldn't get the child support order would end up ending because they're not enrolled full-time in high school. So there are some protections. And in at least in California, even if your child is enrolled full-time in high school, but they're like 20, child support ends in California at 19. Okay. So we have a child, and then we're going to look at the timeshare. The timeshare is literally the amount of time that you have your kid. So if you have your child Friday at 8 p.m. to Monday at 8 a.m., then we are going to calculate those hours. So Friday at 8 p.m. to Saturday at 8 p.m. is 24 hours. Saturday at 8 p.m. to Sunday at 8 p.m. is 24 hours. 8 p.m. on Sunday to 8 a.m. on Monday is 12 hours. So we've got 24 plus 24 is 48 plus 12 is 60. Yeah? Tracking? That's for 1 week. All right. There's 52 weeks in a year. So we're going to say that that's the visitation schedule for all 52 weeks. We're going to take the 60, multiply it by 52. I'm not that good at math. I would have been a doctor if I was. And we're going to figure out what that number is. There's 8,760 hours in a 365 day year. So we're going to take whatever your 60 times 52 is, and we're going to divide it by 8,760 for total hours. That gives you a decimal point. This is taking you back to elementary school, right? And then you're going to move the decimal point over 2, and you'll get a percentage, and that is your timeshare. And you can rewind that and do the math problem. Now you might be thinking, well, Rachel, that's a very simple one because that is the visitation schedule every single week. We have a more complicated one where it is like 1 weekend a month, but then we have 2 weeks of vacation. Okay, however you want to do it, it's a math problem. Take a calendar with every single day for all 365 days a year and write down what the hours are and do your own math problem to come up with a percentage. Just a side note, under the law, when we split holidays, that usually ends up calculating out to about a 2%. So an alternate holiday schedule typically ends up calculating out to a 2% timeshare when we're not in an equal timeshare situation. So like if it calculates out that dad has like 20% timeshare, after you do all of the addition and subtract or multiplication and all of it, and then you also alternate holidays, then we would add typically 2% to that to make it a 22% timeshare. Tracking? Okay, so we've got the kids of the marriage, the minors. Now we know what our percentage of timeshare is. So now we're going to look at incomes. Your income matters. Dad's income matters as well. Some of the other things that we typically look at are how you're filing taxes. What is your tax filing status? This is maybe a little bit more counterintuitive, or maybe it makes total sense if you are an accountant, and I'm just not an accountant, so I feel like it makes less sense. But the more taxes you pay, the less available income you have for child support, so the lower your child support is going to be. So for example, if you file single on your taxes, you're going to pay the most taxes, so you're going to have less available income for child support, so your child support is going to be lower. If you file head of household or one of those other ones, then that is going to be the opposite. If you have more dependents that you're claiming on your taxes, then you're going to have more tax deductions, which means you're going to have more available income for child support, and so your child support order would go up. Tracking? Okay. Some of the other things that we look at when we're doing a child support order are if there's any like healthcare premiums that need to be paid, mandatory union dues, keyword mandatory retirement contributions. Keep in mind mandatory. So if you're voluntarily contributing to your IRA, that's commendable and aren't you fabulous? If your employer has a 401k match, so in your own mind, you're like, I have to contribute because it's like free money, spot on doesn't count for child support. So there's some very, very strict guidelines. And then what do? We marry it all together and we take how many children there are, the timeshare, mom's income, dad's income, any write-offs, and we get a computer-generated number. And most states, every state that I practice in has like a pre-designated formula on how child support is going to work. In California, the law says that child support is guideline, so it's going to automatically be under this formula. The court has discretion in California to deviate from that, to like go off of it. But the only times I've really ever seen it, and I'll tell you, every disgruntled child support payor tries to get the court to deviate. But the scenario literally for the deviation is like somebody's so bloody wealthy and the court said, even though this guideline says like you should be paying this much support, you have so much money that it's going to make it so that the kids have like a crappy life with mom and a outrageous life with dad. So they deviated and they actually ordered it up. The idea behind child support is that the kids are going to have as equal a lifestyle at both houses as possible. So this does mean that even in an equal timeshare situation, higher wage earner is going to be paying lower wage earner. And I totally get it. If you don't like these child support laws, I am just the messenger. You should go talk to your congressman, but you shouldn't bring it to me.
And now for a quick break. This episode of Gavels Down, Voices Up is proudly brought to you by King Law Firm Attorneys at Law Incorporated. We're not just about winning cases, we're about making a difference. Whether it's family law, probate litigation, or standing up against elder abuse, we bring experience, empathy, and excellence to the courtroom. At King Law Firm, we're more than lawyers. We're your team, in your corner, advocating for your rights and making your voice heard. Visit us at thelawyerking.com and on the socials at The Lawyer King to see how we fight with you and for you. King Law Firm Attorneys at Law Incorporated, where your fight becomes our fight. Now, let's get back to today's episode.
Some other things, though, you can deal with hardship. So if there's a hardship situation, you can tell the court that, and it's not going to necessarily reduce your child support, but it goes in and it like amends the calculation a little bit so that you have like, I don't know, ultimately I think it reduces the child support, but not by however much you say your hardship is. It's like a pre-designated formula. One of the things I wanted to say that I think comes up a lot is I see it mostly with men that are paying women child support. So this is for all of you women out there. You are not required to give an itemized breakdown or accounting of how you pay child support. It's just not required. So don't feel obligated to. Oh my gosh, you went and get your nails done all the time and you're always going out with your girlfriends and have new clothes and I shouldn't have to pay for it because you're using all of my money on yourself. Okay. As long as the kids have a place to live and are being taken care of and the food and all of the things, like it's really not your requirement to explain how you're spending your money. So don't go down that rabbit hole. Just ignore it. Okay, we're taking up a lot of time with child support. One of the other things that I think is really important before we pop over into spousal support to know is every jurisdiction has a different amount of time that you can go back and ask for child support. I don't know them all because I don't practice everywhere, but like in California, you can only go back and get retroactive child support to the date that you file. This is a huge change because it used to be that you could go back and get retroactive child support forever, but that was kind of screwing particularly dads, because they wouldn't even know they had a child because it didn't come out of their body. And then mom would raise the kid for 18 years. And then mom at 19 years, when their child was 19, would be like, I'm going to go get child support and get some ungodly amount of child support, like hundreds of thousands of dollars. And the courts came in at one point and said, that is not fair. So in California, you can go retroactive to the date that you file. If you have not collected child support for 5 years and then you get really pissed off or whatever, know that when you file, you're only going back to that date. There's other states that have other things. Like I've heard that some states go back 3 years or whatever the case may be. But keep in mind, I don't know if there's any state, you can tell me if there is, that allows you to go all the way back till your child was born. You also can't get child support while you're pregnant. It needs to be a live birth child. So keep that in mind. If you guys have split up and you're like, well, I'm going to have a baby in a month and I need a house, so I'm going to get child support. The court is only going to order child support on a live birth living child, not one that is very close to being delivered. And then the last little tip that I'll give you about child support, at least in California, again, is that if you apply for public benefit, even if you've agreed, like, baby daddy, you don't need to pay me child support. It's cool. We're good. I'm going to go get on cash aid and get some public assistance to help me while I deal with this transition. That's fine. But the state is going to go after child support from the other parent. And here's why. The way the state looks at it is if you were getting child support from dad, we wouldn't be needing to pay you. So the state's going to come in and start opening a child support case, and you're not going to get the money because they're going to take it back before you get it. So just keep that in mind. I see that come up a lot. And most of the time when it does, Dad then comes in and is pissed and is like, you said I wasn't going to have to pay child support and now I am. And now I want more time with my kid. And you're like, wait, you don't care about your kid. You've never even seen your kid. And it turns into a custody dispute, all because you didn't know that when you went and got food stamps or something like that, it was going to trigger child support. And it does. All right, now let's move on to spousal support. Spousal support, also called alimony, we're going to knock this out pretty quick, is where higher wage earner pays lower wage earner a certain amount. Alimony or spousal support or the length is determined typically by the length of the marriage. The laws on spousal support vary so huge. Like the difference between California and Texas, as the higher wage earner myself, would much prefer to get divorced in Texas because it is very limited on spousal support. In Texas, there are hard dates. No matter how long you've been married, you can only get spousal support for a certain amount of time. Whereas in California, if you've been married in a short-term marriage, which would be typically considered less than 10 years, you're entitled to spousal support for half the length of the marriage. If you're in a long-term marriage, typically over 10 years, you're getting spousal support till you die, he dies, further court order, or you get remarried. So huge difference. You definitely want to look up spousal support in your jurisdiction, make sure you understand what is going on. But I'm a big believer in financial independence, so I don't think anybody should be relying on spousal support. I don't think that there is anything worse for either party to rely or pay the other spouse. It is so high conflict. If you are the receiving supported party, why do you want to rely on him writing a check and keeping a job and all of this for the rest of your life? Like, try and get out from under the need of spousal support. And if you're the paying party, you don't want to. Why do you want to write a check every month to support somebody you don't like and aren't married to? And so you're going to be very tempted to go back into court every single time they get a new job or time passes or they start shacking up with their boyfriend or girlfriend. So it is really just such a high conflict scenario. So to the extent that you can reach an agreement on it, great. To the extent that you can not have this be the downfall of your agreement, that is fantastic. When I separated from my husband, I was very happy that he agreed to terminate spousal support for both of us. I think if that hadn't been an agreement, we probably would have had a much more contentious divorce, quite frankly, because I didn't want to pay it. So spousal support, higher wage earner pays lower wage earner. We look at the length of the marriage. And then the idea behind spousal support is to try and maintain the marital standard of living. But as I say all the time, that's impossible. Why? Because we have my bucket scenario. We have one bucket when you're married. All of the incomes go into the bucket. And then when you get divorced, we have two buckets and the same amount of money going in, but now it's divided in two. So I don't think you have to be a mathematician to realize that anytime you take one and divide it by two, you have less. So it's really impossible, which is why I think it's so frustrating for people. You are not going to be able to maintain your marital standard of living, even though that's what the law tries to have you do. So I always like people, in fact, when you walk into my office, it's like the first thing I'll say, if you're not working, is go find yourself a job or go to school and figure out a career, because you don't know when your spouse is going to get laid off. This is a true story. Husband made this was back, keep in mind, okay, so this was back in the early 2000s, all right? Husband, so money was worth way more. Husband was making $250,000 a year. Wife was a stay-at-home wife. They were married for a very long time. I think it was 19 years, so it was a long-term marriage. Wife was going to be getting spousal support for a very long time. Wife decides to separate and files for divorce and asks for spousal support. There was no children. Husband got laid off a month later. All of the documentation said that it was not husband's fault. I don't know. We'll leave it there. But anyway, all the documentation said that the layoff was legit. So husband started collecting $1,600 a month in unemployment benefits. And the day in court, wife was like, well, I want you to impute and I want you to do this. There was no way that there was no jobs available. We couldn't convince the court to impute at that time. Later on, it's a different story. But at this particular juncture, we couldn't impute. So the court ordered husband to pay wife like $720. So almost half of the unemployment, but it was still, wife was irate. She was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to live on this? And she said this all to the judge, and the judge looked at her and said, well, but there's only $1,600. So that's what we're stuck with, and I have to figure out how to divide it. So again, I don't think that anybody, I think you should always be working on a trajectory to get yourself free of spousal support. I know that's probably also an unpopular opinion, but it's mine. And it's based again on my personal beliefs, but also on what I've seen be the most successful divorce cases that stay out of court, become the least contentious, and that also you have the best life after, right? Your second act or third act or however many we're on. Okay, I want to talk about some of the, well, here's an issue is tax implications of spousal support. Again, I think it's really important, just like the division of assets, to go in and see what the tax consequences are going to be for your spousal support, whether you're the receiving party or the paying party. For example, in California, if you're the paying party, it's not tax deductible to you. And if you're the receiving party, it's not taxable. When this change happened, I was very curious as to why. And I guess the policy behind it, I don't know if that's federal either. I actually don't know that. But the policy behind the change was that people weren't reporting that they were paying spousal support or receiving spousal support. Sorry. So husband was paying, we'll use this as an example, paying spousal support. He's taking the tax deduction. But wife isn't actually filing saying that she's receiving spousal support for her income. So there was no taxes being paid on it. And there was no like 1099 structure or something for checks and balances. So they just did away with it. Anyway, figure out the tax consequences. Filing for support, spousal specifically, matters so much. I represented party in this divorce case where my client was going to end up having to be the paying party of spousal support. They'd only been married for like 3 years. And the other party, the receiving party, had waited 2 years to file for spousal support. So now not only are we in a short-term marriage where spousal support would probably only have been 18 months, but they waited past that 18-month period, still thinking they were going to get the 18 months. And the court came in and said, no, like you have been separated for longer than you would have been receiving support. You've already kind of established your own new standard of living. So it was killed on whatever, there's like a saying, I can't think of what it is. So timing matters. And I think that just timing really matters. So a couple of things to keep in mind when you're dealing with support, child or spousal. Child support is typically always modifiable. Spousal support, in my experience, tends to be the highest conflict part of a divorce process. So as we're doing the divorce, remember you're looking at your whole pie is your entire divorce, figuring out what your piece is, what your deal breaker is, and that is it. If your deal breaker is that you want to receive spousal support because you want that financial income security, that becomes your deal breaker piece of the pie. And then you have the opportunity to negotiate elsewhere, your asset and debt division and your custody or whatever the case may be, right? Figure out your piece of the pie. You can also consider buyouts of spousal support. I've seen that be very successful where like husband really doesn't want to have to pay monthly because that's just like pouring salt on the wound every month. But they're like, all right, you'd probably get spousal support for 10 years. You'd probably get $1,000 a month in spousal support. These are all calculations based on the tools that we have. So we'll go ahead and say you'd get $12,000 a year and you'd get it for 10 years. So that means you get $120,000. I'll just give you $120,000 more assets now to buy you out of it. That can also be really helpful if you're trying to find a place to live or you are cash poor through your divorce. So there's all sorts of magical things. Remember, you can reach any agreement that you want. Communicating is very important. Try and communicate when you're not frustrated, right? You know how to piss off your spouse more than probably better and faster than anybody else. Talking about these high conflict issues is probably best done when you're not in a place where you're going to be very triggering. And if your spouse starts to feel or get triggered, then step away, take a pause, and come back to it. Mediators can be really helpful. All right. In any event, just because you get a court order for child support and spousal support doesn't mean you're going to get that check every day. Enforcement of both is a whole nother ballgame. I'm sure you know somebody who has arrears due in child support that's thinking they're never going to collect it. If you have a spousal support or a child support order in place, maybe it's a temporary one that's not getting paid out, or you've already reached the full permanent one and you want to look at some collection ideas, definitely reach out to a professional in your area to see what they are. If all you have is child support, you guys have reached agreements on everything else and you just need some help with child support, most jurisdictions that I am aware of have some kind of child support agency that is like run by the government with attorneys on staff, and they will help process the child support from start to finish. They'll even oftentimes work on collections for you. So all of those tools are available to you. You might as well take advantage of them because, I mean, you're paying enough taxes, right? Anyway, my name's Rachel King. Please pop over to Getting Divorced Now What. I hope this was helpful, and I will talk to you guys next time. Ciao. That wraps up another episode of Gavels Down, Voices Up. If you found value in our discussion today, please subscribe, leave a review, and share with someone who needs these insights. Your engagement helps us grow and impact more lives. I'm Rachel King, thanking you for listening and reminding you to speak up because every voice deserves to be heard.